when I started singing all these rock climbing songs, I never could go out to Carter Rock without Don's requesting at lunchtime that I sing every one I knew. Well, I like to eat like everybody else. So I decided the only way to make him stop asking me was to write a song that he might not like. So I wrote one about him. It really stopped him cold one Sunday, too. There is a man amidst us who is trying to convince us he's an old-timer. He says the time has come and passed when he could ever call to task a rock climber. He says he's stiff and old and sore, can hardly wobble anymore, but that's funny, 'cause he's the one who runs us ragged, leaves us stiff and sore and haggard each Sunday. When you see Mr. Hubbard on a vertical face without a sign of belay, you say, "Hey, Don, don't you want a rope?" But Don says, "Nope, I'm an invalid and cannot climb." With crippled arm and breaking back, he wrestles with a layback crack that leaves us dizzy. And just to watch his piton pounding and listen to his verbal hounding keeps us busy. For he's the man who leads the way up overhangs with no belay and claims it's simple. He never seems to come to harm. If that's the case, I'll break my arm and be a cripple. When you see Mr. Hubbard on a vertical face without a sign of belay, you say, "Hey, Don, don't you want a rope?" But Don says, "Nope, I'm an invalid and cannot climb."
We always liked to do continuous climbing, but there weren't very many places where we could do that. One of the places where we could do continuous climbing was on Echo Cliffs. There we had two climbs, one at the lower level, which is the one we're photographing, and one at a higher level, which was called the Big Toe Traverse. This is Chris Gordos.
Chris was a powerful climber. He had an incredible strength in his arms and shoulders.
I thought I heard Chris Gordo squall. My feet are a-slipping and I think I'm gonna fall. To drive in a piton took a carabiner. Helen quit. Helen answered, "Hang on, Chris. I'm beating on a piton, but something's gonna miss." And I hit my thumb and I bruised the rope. And I dropped the carabiner and the hammer broke. Gordo said, "You great big ghoul, what did they teach you when you went to school?"
Why is this traverse called Donald's Ducks?
It got its name because on at least 3 occasions, people ended up precipitously in the Potomac when they were doing this climb. The first time occurred when Marion Jackson was tied into the rope and tied in just around the waist. And back in those days, as you could see, we did not use harnesses or slings to tie into, but we just tied in. The center man usually tied in on either on an overhand knot or on a butterfly. And Marion tied in, and when she peeled off the rocks, she collapsed the shoulders, and the loop, which had been snug around her waist.
She'd been better off if she had a bust.
Well, she did. She just slipped up over her shoulders, and she wound up in the river. The second time occurred when Don Hubbard was leading, and he just popped off the rock and wound up swimming in the Potomac. And the third time occurred when Don Jacobs was leading and was being belayed by Don Hubbard. And he did the same thing. He popped off the climb and wound up in the Potomac. And as he was falling and And swimming in the Potomac, Don kept yelling, "I've got you, I've got you, I've got you." And there was Don Jacobs swimming around and looking up in despair at Don, who had failed to stop his fall. Don maintains that he had made a perfect catch and that he had swung Don Jacobs out away from the cliff so that he had a nice, clean fall into the river.
He didn't put in that advanced piton, which at the last split second, I kept urging him forward because it's something you could do, but at the last split second, he hadn't put in that piton. And
Who's climbing third on the rope?
The third person on the climb is Johnny Reed. Johnny is still a teenager, has become very good at climbing and was beginning to show the skills and that made him into one of the better climbers in the Potomac area.
We had no age generation gap at all. We had the greatest bunch of teenagers that climbed with us and hung out with us.
I'll be down to get you with a blotter, honey, a nut pick and a spare canteen. 'Cause where you're trying to lead, there ain't a handhold, foothold to be seen. That big TG is high above, and I don't want to follow when you make the lunge. Though it's not the thing to do, I'm gonna cut this rope in two, and I'll meet you at the bottom with the sponge.
Climbing in this area had its genesis with an Alsatian, a Frenchman named Gus Gams, who learned to climb in Europe, in the Alps, came to this country in the early part of this century, and loved to go out on the local rocks and climb. He tried to get other people to come along with him. And he got such old-timers as Harold Stimson and Silsby and Appel, but it really wasn't until he met Paul Brott and taught Paul Brott how to climb that rock climbing as we know it today really got its start in the Washington area. And that was sometime in the middle or late 30s.
Anytime you see climbers of our group, you're looking at Paul Brott, his instructions, and his insistence. He has a bug on safety, nicest person, an excellent climber, very solicitous about other people to see they were taught correctly, they had an entertaining time.
we finished the climb there. It actually goes farther up the river. This is up and out, isn't it?